Welcome everyone to the CELPIP Reading Part 4 Understanding Viewpoints Analysis. Now I'm just here in the CELPIP library in Part 4. And before we get started, I do want to remind you that Reading Part 4 focuses more on CLB 7 plus or higher. What does that mean? Well, that means that if you need to get CLB 7 or higher, 8 or 9 for example, then you need to do well in part 4 because part 4 will be the most challenging part for higher levels. Okay, reading part 1, 2, those parts are very easy, and usually level 7 or higher, they get everything correct in parts 1 and 2. Okay, but in part 4, it will be more complicated. That's because the reading texts will be more complicated with higher level English expression and vocabulary, and the questions will also be more difficult to answer. Okay, so higher levels, they should do well and they should get more points in part 4. Now, if you need to get CLB 4, 5, or 6, this part will be very difficult, okay? Because it will be more difficult English and vocabulary and ideas to understand for lower levels. And usually, just to give you an example, level 5, usually they get 0 in this part, okay? And CLB 6, they might get 1 or 2, okay? But level 5 or 4, they get 0 in this part. So that's because, again, it's much more difficult English readings and questions and vocabulary. Okay, so CLB 4, 5, or 6, you need to do well in part 1 and 2. That's where you need to do well because that is the easier readings and questions. Okay, I hope that's clear. Now, secondly, I want to remind you about our Reading Understanding Viewpoints Tips and Strategies video. This video will give you a really detailed analysis of what reading strategies you can use, okay? How you can read effectively, how to read the questions, how to answer the questions, and some of the tips and strategies that I will be using in this analysis, they are explained in this video. So if you need that kind of knowledge, then please watch that tips and strategies video, and I will leave a link in the description box, okay? So then everyone, let's get started with today's sample, language shift. Okay, so here we are in the front page of this sample, and you'll notice that this sample lesson will include 5 parts, okay? The video we are watching right now, okay? And then we have some vocabulary building. Now, vocabulary building is a great way for you to improve your vocabulary. And this vocabulary comes from the reading that we will analyze. So we have some words or some good words for you to keep in mind. Inequality, diagnose, nutritious. Words that if you don't know, well, or if you need to review them, here they are. The word, the basic meaning, synonyms and antonyms. Very good for building. And then even better after that, you have this great vocabulary building. How do you do it? Well, you read the sentence and then you should write a word from the list in here. Which word will complete this sentence? Okay, and so on. And that's a great way for you to build your vocabulary. Great exercise. And then we have comprehension building. Comprehension building. Now, comprehension building, it's a exercise that will improve your ability to understand ideas better and differentiate between ideas, because that's something that you need to do in part 4. So you read the idea A, you read idea B, and then you have to try to say, do they agree or disagree with each other? It's a very good tool for helping you build your comprehension. Okay, everyone, and I strongly recommend that kind of building comprehension exercise. And then we have test practice 1, which we're going to analyze right now. And then after that, we have test practice 2. Test practice 2 will help you review the reading that we did and answer questions, but it's a different version. It's version 2 of this exam. Most CELPIP exams have different versions, okay? So it's a great way for you to review what we studied. Okay, everyone. So now let's get started with today's analysis. All right, and here we are. Okay, so everyone, you'll notice that this is the same format as the real exam. We have our reading on the left, and we have our questions on the right. And it's almost an identical format. The only difference, and we have our time over here, the only difference will be just the way that the questions are, the answers are laid out. Here we have the question and then the answers underneath. In the real exam, you have the questions just next to it, but it's still multiple choice, same format. And also in here, we have to fill in the blank. And here we have 6, 7, 8. Now for the answers, they are here at the bottom. The answer selection 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, etc. But in the real exam, when you press the number 6, your answer options will be there. I find that to be a little bit confusing actually. But I find this format to be better. But in the real exam again, when you click 6, the answer options will appear there. But in our exam, they are here, okay? And also, we have our time over here. We have 13 minutes to complete part 4, okay? Now, I'm just going to give you a few tips about how we can answer that in 13 minutes or what we can do to manage our time effectively. One thing to do is to always keep an idea of what the questions are like. Some questions are very direct, like paragraph 1 mainly focuses about, you see? Okay, and this one here is about Dr. Patricia. So where is Dr. Patricia here? And then in paragraph 3, what does that mean? And then paragraph 4, what's the main point? So usually it's very direct, the questions, and it's very important. So that's the first part about managing time. We should read the paragraph, check the questions. 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 We need to know clearly always what the questions are about, okay? So that's the first thing that we can keep in mind. And then the second part that I want to say it's a good way for us to read effectively is to focus more on ideas, not vocabulary. This confuses students many times. Many times students get confused because they see similar vocabulary. Over here, we're going to find minimum wage, for example. Somewhere over here I see minimum wage, you see? Lower level students, and by lower level, I mean even 7, they might not completely understand the idea and they'll just try to match vocabulary. Okay? But we need to make sure that we read the full idea, not just match vocabulary. This is very important. Here is the full idea, and then over here, we need to understand that full idea with the vocabulary, okay? So that's very important. It's an idea test, not a vocabulary test only, okay? Vocabulary is important. There's lots of higher level vocabulary here that you need to know, but it's not a vocabulary test. No, okay? All right. And then the other idea that I want to give you is that we need to understand clearly viewpoints. All right, viewpoints. Here we have different viewpoints, all right? And we need to make sure that we understand how they are different, how they are the same, because the questions, sometimes they ask questions exactly about agree, disagree, how are the viewpoints the same? Sometimes not. I see here that they don't really ask that question, but most of the times they do. And in particular, in questions 6 to 10, this is another viewpoint. And so this viewpoint here is going to be trying to connect to these viewpoints here in some way. So we really need to understand what are the different viewpoints. This is very important, okay? And then the last part that I think is important is about time. And we should give ourselves at least 3 or 4 minutes to complete the last part. It's very important. Okay, I would say 4 minutes. 4 minutes would be good, because sometimes this paragraph here, which is complete the text, it can be very confusing. So make sure that it's not going to be something where it's very easy to match and match. No, we need to give ourselves enough time. And I would say 4 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes will be very important. Okay, all right. Well, I hope those tips and strategies are useful for you. Now let's get started with today's analysis. And we are going to be doing test practice 1. So then, everyone, I will remind you that we are going to be reading together. I'm going to be reading for you, and I'm going to be explaining some things or summarizing. And I'm going to be doing it in a way in how I would do it if I were really doing the exam myself. I will be trying to understand those ideas so we can try to develop those skills, okay? And then I will be going to the questions. I'm going to be reading the questions and reading the answers. And I'm going to be giving you a chance to answer if you can, okay? And then I will be explaining the answer. Okay. Now I'm just going to zoom in here so we can read better. Okay. All right. Here we go. Out with the oot, no more a boot. Canada is talking with a newspeak in a linguistic pivot called the Canadian vowel shift. We are pronouncing God more like God, bagel more like bagel, pillow like pillow, and sorry less like sorry. Very interesting. Now, I'm not sure if I pronounced those clearly, but I can understand here. We're trying to say that, well, there's a change happening in the way that English is being pronounced, I guess, in Canada. This one about God and God, yes, I have heard that one. Okay, the word Timbit is becoming Tembit, and Dan slipped on the staircase now sounds like more like Dawn slept on it. Dawn slept, yeah, a little bit maybe. First discovered in 1995, the new vowels are contagious. spreading rapidly from Victoria to St. John's, where linguists are mapping out the frequency of people's voices and using ultrasounds to track their tongue and lip placement. Very interesting. So it's saying that this is spreading everywhere and contagious, right? Everybody is catching on with it. Everyone is catching it, contagious like a virus. Okay. Very interesting. Now, let's look at number one, the main focus of this passage. Maybe we don't know yet because we didn't read it all. And some questions are about everything. So let's just leave that one. Linguists are studying Canadian people's speech patterns by. Also, didn't really read that one yet. The change in Canadian pronunciation is exemplified by an updated air safety recording, a popular YouTube video, trends in Canada's university system, the numerous accents now prevalent across Canada. We didn't read that yet either. So maybe just number one to get an idea how Canadian vocabulary is changing, how Canadian society is tolerant of others, how new pronunciations are spreading through Canadian society, how Valley Girls speech is taking overall across Canada. Well, it's not 100% clear yet. We're going to look at it after, okay? Let's look at paragraph 2. We're in the middle of a transformation, says Paul de Decker, a sociolinguist at Memorial University of Newfoundland. Our vowels are getting higher and backer in the mouth, and it's more widespread, more diverse than we initially thought. So it's happening everywhere. Some linguists compare the shift to Valley Girl speech, which is perhaps most dramatically demonstrated by an American comedian in the hit YouTube video Shoes. So something about this, it's called Valley Girl speech, Shoes, some video. The chorus shoes, oh my god, shoes sounds more like shaws, oh my god, shaws. Okay, something like that. Very interesting. Okay, so it doesn't sound like shoes, it sounds like shaws. And again, God. More mildly in Canada, we find the shift in the Air Canada pre-flight safety video. When we hear "Welcome aboard, Air Canada," compared to a 1986 version, the Canada is now pronounced farther back in the mouth like Canada. Canada, Canada, Canada. Okay. Very interesting. Okay. Now, we did see some questions here. The change in Canadian pronunciation is exemplified by well, not trends in Canada's university. It says just the Decker is a university professor. Numerous accents. Didn't really say that yet. But I'm looking at these two here and well, it would have to be the air safety recording because in the Air Canada safety video. Now, about B, that is about Valley Girls speech, not in Canadian pronunciation. Okay, that's different. So I think it would have to be A for that one. Well, the Decker is a sociolinguist here. Didn't really say that one there yet either. Let's look at paragraph 3. These changes in the mouth are happening under our noses. Even though the new pronunciation is used every day, almost nobody has heard of it. Not the president of Canada's Association of University and College English Teachers, nor the national director of Teachers of English as a Second Language. Okay. So it says that it's happening everywhere, but we don't really see it, or no one is talking about it. As it creeps into our speech under the level of social awareness, creeps into means slowly comes in, and we don't know it or we don't realize it. The vowel shift is known as a change from below, with a suspected epicenter in urban Ontario. So this is like where it's mostly happening. Wait, what the hell? Okay, should be hell, not hall. The Decker explains the shift as a result of Canadian tolerance. As immigrants and visitors arrive with different accents, we have come to tolerate variation and to play with language ourselves. Okay, so we accept it. Okay. If we weren't tolerant, he says, we would crack down and say, no, that's not how it's pronounced. Instead, we started to push the envelope even further. So we accept it. We don't crack down, means we crack down means not accept it. Refuse to accept it or try to find what is wrong, crack down on it. And instead, we've started to push the envelope. Very good phrase here. Push the envelope means do something even more further. So we're doing it even more. So we are doing this or accepting this vowel shift even more. Interesting. So then, well, we have here number 5 right across. In paragraph 3, the Decker says the Canadian vowel shift shows that Canadians are easily influenced by outsiders and need more social awareness. Educational experts are out of touch with popular trends. Canadians are open-minded when it comes to speech differences. We should not tolerate variation or play with language ourselves. So the Canadian vowel shift shows that, okay, what does it show? Well, I wouldn't say that we should not tolerate variation, or maybe we should not tolerate it, but not play with language ourselves. And here it says that we've pushed the envelope more. So not D. So what do you think, A, B, or C? Well, not A. It's not about Canadians easily influenced and need more social awareness. It says here about social awareness that under the level, so we don't realize it. Not that we need more, not we need more. So B or C? Educational experts are out of touch with popular trends. Canadians are open-minded. Well, I would say that it's not that they're out of touch with popular trends. It's because we don't even realize it. So it's not out of touch. But it is trying to say here that it's happening because we have become we tolerate variation and play with language ourselves. Means we are open-minded. when it comes to speech differences. Okay. So it means that we ourselves tolerate it because we're open-minded, we tolerate it, and we accept it. Very interesting. Okay. And what about number 4, the term under our noses? Something that is offensive to many people, something that is happening in plain sight but unnoticed, something that is happening too slowly to be noticed, something that many people are starting to notice. Well, it's right over here, right? These changes in the mouth are happening under our noses. It's used every day. Almost nobody has heard of it. So, offensive? No. Many people are noticing? No. Says nobody heard of it. So, too slowly to be noticed or happening in plain sight but unnoticed. So, it would be B. That's what under our noses means. It's very clear because our nose is right there. We can see our nose with our eyes. We can see it, but under our nose, we can't see under our nose, right? Very interesting. Good expression. It's happening right under our noses. It's clear, but we don't see it. Okay. And so let's read the last paragraph. It wasn't clear about those yet. With young women initially leading the shift, some experts suggest they subconsciously adopted it from California as a way to portray a trendier identity. Trendier, more popular. Subconsciously, don't realize it. Don't realize. De Decker says the new Canadian vowels only partly resemble Valley Girl speech, and that the similarities may be coincidental, by chance. Still, he agrees the new vowels are in vogue, popular. It's like a badge saying, these are all the people I've met, and I have the vowel system prove it. So it's something trendy, popular, modern, okay? From California, movies, Hollywood. Yes, probably. Okay. So what about number 1? The main focus of this passage is to, so again, how Canadian vocabulary is changing, how Canadian society is tolerant of others, how new pronunciations are spreading through Canadian society, how Valley Girl speech is taking over all across Canada. So it's not A for sure because it's not about vocabulary, okay? And also it's not B because it's not just tolerant of others, it's tolerant of language. So C or D, new pronunciations are spreading through Canadian society, or Valley Girl speech is taking over all across Canada. Well, not D, right? Because it's really not taking over. They said it's mainly in Ontario also. What I read over here, it said over here, with a suspected epicenter in Ontario. So epicenter, the main area where they think or suspect it started. Okay. Right. So C. So new pronunciations are spreading throughout Canada. Okay. So linguists are studying Canadian people's speech patterns by, now this one wasn't very clear here, but I think I see here, okay, we missed it. Paragraph 1, where linguists are mapping the frequency of people's voices and using ultrasounds to track their tongue and lip placement over here. So mapping their location in the country, counting the frequency of people's conversations, listening to people's speech using ultrasound technology, identifying the position of people's lips and tongues. So definitely not A, right? It's not about location in the country. Also not B. Not about people's conversations. So C or D. People's speech using ultrasound technology. Identifying the position of people's lips and tongues should be. So they use ultrasound technology to map the position. So D would be what it's saying there. Okay. Very interesting. So now let's get to the second part. Let's remember here we need to understand sentence by sentence. While I'm not sure that this 6 is not a dire, serious situation, I think it truly does pose or have a serious issue for students who are learning English as a second language. Yes, that's true. It would be hard. I'm sure this is not a dire situation. This language phenomenon, pronunciation predicament, language debacle, phonetic compromise. Well, it would not, well, I feel like language, pronunciation, language, phonetic, they do match. But what about the second word? It's not a predicament. Predicament is a serious situation or difficult situation. The same as debacle, not debacle, because a debacle is a serious issue or problem. And so compromise or phenomenon. Phonetic means sound, it matches with pronunciation, but not compromise. Compromise means me and you are talking about negotiating something. I say this, you say that. I say, okay, let's agree to this. That's a compromise, agreeing to something. But it is a phenomenon, something interesting happening. Okay? Okay, for me, the issue does not arise from Canadian 7 due to its more multicultural 8, as the Decker points out. So it does start from Canadian what? Embrace of foreign languages, diversification of cultures, tolerance of accent, sophistication with pronunciation. So Canadian acceptance does arise from Canadian. Well, he talked about it in this paragraph, right? He said that we have tolerance of, well, pronunciation. If we weren't tolerant, he says, we would crack down and say, no, that's not how it's pronounced. It's not pronounced like that. So that one, not foreign languages, not cultures, and not sophistication. Sophistication means we would try to pronounce. So tolerance of accent, which is similar to pronunciation, okay? And why do we accept it? Canadian tolerance of pronunciation due to its multicultural challenges, attitude, heritage, legislation. This one for sure would be heritage. Heritage means multicultural society, heritage, many different cultures. So in Canada, we have a multicultural heritage because we accept so many people from so many different countries, and it's great. Okay? I think it's great. However, even more so, historically, there weren't so many issues with pronunciation, primarily because there wasn't such a widespread interest in popular culture, which undoubtedly has the problem. Undoubtedly, for sure. Surely, clearly, undoubtedly. It's an adverb, right? Which undoubtedly has the problem. Exacerbated, exaggerated, exasperated, or endangered. Well, definitely, well, we have vocabulary here. we want a word that means, I can see the word here, the word that means increased the problem. Increased, and that's exacerbated. Not exaggerated means not seriously. Exasperated, that means like annoyed or made negative. It's not exasperated. And endangered means almost make it go away. Endangered the problem means almost stop the problem, which is not the case. So exacerbated means made it worse or increased. Okay, perhaps the best solution would be to stress the importance of maintaining the English language in its essential Canadian form. It's a solution. By having more pronunciation classes when teaching English. And 10, by stressing it more frequently in public schools. Well, I think so. Teaching pronunciation classes, that would be good, and stressing it more. So, and 10. Subsequently, nevertheless, while we're at it, even more so. So, connector. So, this one here, it's about teaching pronunciation in classes and stressing it more. Sounds like a positive, which not would be nevertheless, means but, subsequently means we will do it after. So even more so, and even more so by doing this. Well, very interesting topic. Language, pronunciation in Canada, that's true. We do accept accent. I think accent is very unique sometimes. I like having different accents. Of course, we need to still, even though there's an accent, it should be clear. That's the important part. But this is a problem with pronunciation. It's true. So, looks like we got everything, everyone. Looks like we got everything. So, how did you do? Did you get 10 from 10? Well, I hope so. Now, if you didn't get 10 from 10, everyone, what can we do? Well, the first thing we need to do is review the answers. We need to review the answers and we need to understand why the answer is the answer. And these CELPIP library has some really good explanations for most answers. See, it explains it clearly. And sometimes it explains also why the other answers are not the answers. So that's also very important. We need to understand why the other answers are not the answers. We can go ahead and retake the test and review the other answers. Why are they not the answers? This is very important for improving our comprehension skills, okay? And then it's also very important to review the reading. Let's read it again. Let's make sure that we understand the expression of sentences, ideas. And let's make sure that we understand vocabulary. Don't forget that vocabulary is one thing, but we need to understand vocabulary in use. Here it says to push the envelope. Very good expression. But how does to push the envelope even further, how does that relate to this idea? That's what we need to understand. We need to understand why we used it. Well, it's said here, instead of changing, we're pushing the envelope, going to the limits, okay? That's what it means. Causing it even more. So reading the text and reading the articles again and again really improves our knowledge, okay? And for that, everyone, I have left a link in the description box to our sample lesson. Here it is, where you can practice test practice 1 again, okay? And let's not forget about test practice 2. Test practice 2 will be great. Same reading, so you can practice again, but we have time and we have different questions. Right. And usually test 2s, they're more difficult, everyone. Very good. Version 2s are usually more difficult, so I strongly recommend that for practice, okay? Then everyone, let's not forget to subscribe to the CELPIP library. Now, our CELPIP library includes over 60 examples of reading part 4. That's a great tool to have for you to practice. Okay, and with version 2s, you could have about 100 examples. So very great, everyone. I strongly recommend to subscribe to the CELPIP library. And so, with discount code CELPIP79, discount code CELPIP79, you can get a 3-month subscription to CELPIP library, 3 months, for only $10.99, everyone. That's a great deal. Don't forget that our CELPIP library includes all of the CELPIP exams, different versions, and more. Okay? So that's about 90 days, and you have about 100 exams. So you will definitely build your knowledge, okay, everyone? So I strongly recommend to subscribe to the CELPIP library. And let's not forget, practice makes perfect.